Perfect. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this webinar. This has to be one of my favorite topics that I help my clients on because creating a winning team for your business is your golden ticket to actually getting some independence from your business, right? If you think about the life of a typical small business owner, we set up this business, we work super hard, marketing, sales, admin, all of these things. And then we get to a point in which we can start hiring people, and that excitement of like, hey, now I can hire people, I can offload some stuff, and I can focus on growing the business, and they're going to take care of these things, and it's going to be amazing. And when that happens and you hire your people, you train them, and you're going through this journey, actually, what we find is managing and leading a team is probably one of the hardest parts of business because we're dealing with different personalities, different types of attitudes, different skill sets. And it really takes somebody who's skilled, somebody who has a lot of intention to be able to develop this winning team. I love using this analogy for creating a winning team for your business. So, this is a Formula One race. It's a pit stop that happens during the race. In this time, 23 people come together. They change the tires on this car, they do some basic maintenance, refuel, and back onto the track again. For those of you who don't watch F1, I'd love for you to take a guess in the chat box. How long does an average F1 pit stop take? Okay. How long does an average F1 pit stop take? So if you can just throw some guesses there in the chat box, and we'll see how close you are. Okay. If you watch F1, you're not allowed to participate. You're gonna ruin the show here. Okay, we got some guesses coming in. So 15 seconds, 20 seconds, 10 seconds, 5 seconds, 6 seconds. Okay, great guesses, right? The average F1 pit stop takes 2 seconds. And in fact, Red Bull have hold the record for it being sub 2 seconds, right? Let's just take a moment to process that for just a second, right? 23 people get together, change four tires, refuel the car, basic maintenance, and then in 2 seconds, the car is back out onto the race again. That is absolutely phenomenal. Now, technically, what these guys are doing is not actually super hard with some practice, right? Even I can change a tire, and I'm not great at car stuff. It takes me more like 20 minutes than it does 2 seconds, but even I can do that, right? But what it takes though for 23 people to come together to do this, and the stakes are high, by the way. The difference between first and second place in an F1 race is tenths of a second. Right? On average, teams, well, I know Mercedes a few years ago spent $200 million on developing the technology for their car, right? So the stakes are high. There's a lot of investment that goes into this. And therefore, in order to make this happen, it doesn't happen by accident. Nobody says, all right, you guys are responsible for changing the tires. Go out there, do your thing, and come back as quick as you can. Actually, it's choreographed, it's practiced, everybody knows their roles inside out, and they all hold each other accountable. And each one of those people know that if they don't perform their role, then it could cost them the whole race. And I love to use that as an analogy for my small business because it doesn't matter whether you hire salespeople, bookkeepers, admin people, marketing people. You know that everybody in your business needs to be performing at a really high level in order for your business to succeed. However, so often what happens is that we hire people for their skill set. We then assume because they have the right skill set, they're going to go away and do everything that needs to be done. And then we're disappointed when actually that doesn't actually happen. So if that resonates for you, just typing winning team into the chat box and we can move on because you can make sure that you are in the right place. So just type in winning team or just type in team. It'll be quicker. Type in team into the chat box and I know that we're ready to move on. Okay, winning team, team. Okay, perfect. Excellent. All right. So here's the problem when it comes to creating a winning team, right? Finding a really good hire is a little bit like this. Finding Waldo, for those of you who aren't familiar, right? You have a look around, you have a look around. It takes ages to kind of find that one person. And for those of you who are intrigued, Waldo is hiding just over here. Let me zoom in for you. There you go. You can see him there, right? So it takes me ages to find that right candidate. And then when I do find that right candidate, unfortunately, I get turned down and they go somewhere else to get a job. Maybe they're more interested in working at a larger corporate. Maybe they're more interested in doing something else, right? The reality is in today's economy, well, up until recently, I should say, but even now is still the case that our candidates have more options than they ever have had to get a job. And that what that means is that we have to work really harder to actually find those right people. And then let's just say that we do find the right person and they are working in our business. We're in fear, right? We're in fear that actually, if they walk out, then we're going to have to replace them with somebody else. And for some of you, you may have gone through that. It may feel like your hiring process is a little bit like a revolving door, right? People come in, they last for a few months, maybe a year, they move on to the next thing, and now you are starting again. Right? So that's the challenge that often my clients have when they're building out their team. And really, there's an opportunity here to flip the script. And the opportunity is that actually that I know exactly who's a great fit for my company. And not only do I know, but actually they know me as well. Right? I can communicate in a way, I can meet them in a way that actually when I see them and they see me, we know that this is going to be a great fit for them. And therefore, when we're able to do that, what that means is that I can line up a talent pool, i.e., people want to come and work for me. They're waiting for me to have openings so that I can hire them. And once I do hire them, they come, they're closing deals, they're being productive, they're helping growing the business. And what I'm going to share with you today is a few strategies, a few frameworks that I implement with my clients in order to achieve this. So let me give you a little bit of an introduction to myself. So I am a business coach at a firm called the Kaizen Consulting Group. So we're a global firm of coaches. We coach people in business and leadership, and together, between myself and a couple of other coaches, we have worked with over 1,400 companies to help them grow their business. And with the idea being is that we want to have a positive impact on the economies and the societies that we operate in. I personally am a partner here in the US part of the business here in Minnesota, and I work with entrepreneurs to build sustainable businesses. The sustainable business is one that actually, when I build it, it can operate without me or with much less reliance on me. Right? That's how we define a sustainable business in our terminology. The risk is that I build a business, and if it's totally reliant on me, then actually I've built myself a great job, but not necessarily a business. And creating a winning team is part of that, creating the sustainable business. Been working with businesses in the US and Europe for over 10 years now, and enjoying every minute of it so far. So let's go on to the first strategy that I want to talk to you about. And this is the recruitment process. So we're going to talk about the recruitment, and then we're going to talk about, well, once they're in, how do we make sure that they are actually performing really well? Now, when it comes to recruitment and hiring people for my small business, there's a few things that I need to be aware of. The first thing is that I need a very well laid out process in order to get the right person through the door. And part of that process is understanding that recruitment is sales. All right, let me repeat that. Recruitment is sales. What do I mean by that? Is that if you think about all the effort you've put into marketing your business, okay, you think about who your ideal client is, you think about how you can reach them, you think about how you can get them excited about your products and services, and then you build a relationship with them, and then you offer the sale. Right. And that is pretty much the same thing we need to do with recruitment, particularly as a small business owner. As a small business owner, not only do I have to think about my brand as a business, but how does that extend out to my brand as an employer? Mm? What is it? Why should people come and work for me? What is it that's exciting about my company? What is it that's exciting about my leadership style? Because if I'm able to communicate this, I'm more likely to get the best talent that's out there in the marketplace. And therefore, when I think about the process, often for any of you who have been to my marketing and sales webinars through school, will know that we talk about this concept of buying being an emotional decision and a logical decision. Okay, yes, I outweigh the pros and cons, but then it depends on how excited I get about that product or service, is whether I am going to make that decision. And hiring is exactly the same process. The challenge is, though, most of the time when it comes to hiring, we approach it in a very logical form, right? We have this very kind of detailed job description of what people are going to be doing. We list out the salary, we list out the benefits of working with us and any other things that we do, and then we expect a bunch of people to apply and we'll find the right person. However, what I want you to think about is how can you articulate your job description, articulate what you do in the business, and articulate what it's like working for you that really appeals to the emotional side to get people excited about working for you. And I'm going to show you one thing that you can do for that, which is creating a massive transformative purpose for your business. What do we mean by a massive transformative purpose? Well, there was some research done a number of years ago which studied what they call exponential organizations. Okay. And how they defined an exponential organization is that they looked at various different industries. And in each industry, what they found is that there was one or two market players who were above everybody else, right? They were just outperforming everybody else, and then you'd have the rest of the market over here, right? So think of your Googles of the world, your Teslas, right? All of these types of brands that we know about. And once they'd done the study, they said, hey, what's the difference between the people who work in this organization and the people that work in the other organizations? And the difference came down to that all of these organizations had what we call a massive transformative purpose. They had a reason to exist that was bigger than themselves. They had a reason to exist that went beyond kind of profits and dollar amounts. Now, let's be clear here, right? Private entities are all about making money, right? And that is one of the primary objectives. Having said that, there are organizations out there who are looking to make an impact. There are many small businesses. A lot of the reasons why people go into small businesses because they identify a problem, they're passionate about a project, and they want to actually create change in the world, whatever that means for you, right? Whether it's your local city, whether it's the state, whether it's the country, whether it is actually the world, right? And therefore, exponential organizations were able to communicate this in a way that actually made people excited. Let me give you an example of some massive transformative purposes, right? So, Google is my favorite example to use, right? Their tagline was organize the world's information. Now, let's think back to a time before Google existed, right? For those of us that can remember that, right? At that time, information was organized in encyclopedias, in libraries, it was all over the place. And Google came along and said, you know what we're going to do? We're going to take all of this information and we're going to organize it in such a way that people can access it wherever they are from their laptop and now their phones, right? At that time, people would have said, hey, you guys are crazy. How are you actually going to achieve this? But by having such a big goal, what they were able to do was recruit people who were also, to be honest with you, a little bit crazy in their eyes and thought, yes, this is possible and I want to be part of this. And look at the impact that they have had on our everyday lives. Another story around this is when President Kennedy was visiting the NASA space station. And there's this famous story of his walking down the corridor. There's another gentleman walking down as well. And President Kennedy introduces himself and he says, I'm President Kennedy. Who are you? And he says, I am whoever. He says, what do you do here at NASA? And he said, he was actually the janitor but he described himself as, hey, I am helping put a man on the moon, sir. Right? So the janitor was just as invested in the mission as the scientist was, as the astronauts were. And that's really what we're looking to create for our organizations. So I just want to take a minute to pause here and say, hey, how are you thinking about your business? How are you communicating what is it your business does and what is the purpose of your organization? And can you communicate that and articulate it in a way that is going to make other people excited on a emotional basis as well as a logical basis? So that's strategy number one. Recruitment is sales. Well, part of this first strategy is that recruitment is sales, and therefore I need to get people excited about working here. The second thing then is let's be really clear on who we want to hire, right? Just like Marketing 101 tells us what you need to know who your ideal client is, right? Because when you know your ideal client, you can communicate with them. There's the saying that says when you try to speak to everybody, actually you speak to nobody, right? And the same thing happens with marketing. Be really clear about who is it that you want to hire. And I just want to show you this video clip here, which really kind of demonstrates that. And I'd love for you just to put into the chat box once I start playing it, just to say yes, that you can hear it, so I can make sure that you guys are getting the best experience.
Thanks for coming in.
Thank you for having me. That's my resume.
Oh, great. We're looking for someone who has a lot of experience in this work.
I thought this was an entry-level position.
Yes, well, experienced entry level. Experienced is sort of implied. We're looking for someone who's really a team player, but can also work independently as well. So it's really important that the person who fills this role is someone who has a lot of initiative, won't rock the boat, will shake things up, but takes a very cautious approach in making decisions, is a real risk taker, but plays by the rules. We don't like to micromanage around here, but we do require hourly status updates. In fact, I just do it via video chat. I just keep it open. In fact, hey Steve, how are you?
Hey, how you doing?
All right, we're doing the interview right now. Just wanted to update you on that. Say hi to Steve.
Steve.
We're looking for someone who's confident but not overly confident, innovative but traditional, easy to work with but with a bit of an edge. You know, I think reliable maverick is the best way I can sum up this position. This is indeed an experienced entry level position, so the offer is going to reflect that, but we do have a lot of great snacks in the kitchen. Kind bar? She's gone, Steve.
Ah, shit.
Okay, so a little bit exaggerated, but hopefully you get the idea, right? How many times have we kind of created a job description ourselves or thought about, hey, who do we want to hire? And we're like, hey, this is like more of an entry level position, but man, if they've got experience in this, like that would be great, right? Do you know what? We want somebody who's really gonna like take initiative and show ideas and take the business forward. But actually they need to work in this very like set way, right? We give loads of flexibility, but they need to be like this and they need to be here at this time and they need to do that, right? By the way, either one is fine, right? If you want somebody who's like a real rule follower, who actually is a really laid out process, they need to execute the process and they need to be able to do that consistently. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Some jobs require that, but let's be really clear about who you want in this business. In fact, I'm just working with a client last week and they're making their second hire and they're like, we could do with somebody like ideally a college grad, but if they had experience in this, then that would be great. And it's like, yeah, I don't think a college grad has experience in that, or most of them don't. So we need to really pick a lane, like who do we want? Because depending on who we want, it depends on how we're going to communicate this and where we are going to go to actually hire these people. So, you need to make a list for yourself. What qualifications is it important for them to have? Often we ask for like degrees and all of this stuff when is it really required for the job? What types of experience do you want them to have? Is it important for you for them to have industry experience? Or are there other industries that you can go out to, and because they have transferable skills, you're able to bring them in. I worked with one individual, they were a construction company, they done outdoor kind of paving and landscaping and things, and they were hiring salespeople. And I remember the individual told me was that the best salespeople in his experience were bartenders, because they were able to strike up for informal conversations. They were able to be very personable. And that skill was the key thing that he wanted for people going to their homes and actually providing them quotes. So he would go to where bartenders hang out and network with them there and offer them jobs. And he had amazing success in actually doing that. What types of personality do they want? What kind of attitude do they have? These are things that once we get really clear about, then we can intentionally look for this in your recruitment process. Through your job description, you can highlight this, through the way you're going to conduct the interview, right? Through the questions that you are going to ask, so you can make sure that you're finding that right information. So, the idea being that once you've communicated your big vision, once you've really narrowed down the type of person that you want, and you're talking to these people, as you're both talking, not only are you excited about them joining your organization, but they're getting excited about joining you. Because when you can get them excited about joining you, then it makes things like what's the pay going to be a different conversation. Let's be real, as small businesses, we can't offer the same salaries as large organizations do, right? We can't offer the benefits package that large organizations do. So that's a challenge for us. So if we can do this, then what that means is that people are more willing to, the best talent is more willing to work for us. I'm not saying it takes money off the table completely, but what the research consistently shows is that people are willing to, as long as you're in and around market, but if we can get like between 10 to 12, 15% of some of these larger organizations, people are actually often willing to take that pay reduction to work in an environment that they genuinely find rewarding, that they genuinely enjoy, and it lights them up as well. So this is a really important strategy of our recruitment process. Feel free as we're going along. I should have said in the start, if you've got any questions, comments, just throw them into the chat box. I'll take them as we go along, and there'll also be an opportunity for questions at the end. So I think good for you guys to take a picture of this slide or a screenshot of this slide, and you guys can really reflect on this in your own time. But why would somebody want to work for you, right? Genuine question. Why would somebody want to work for you? And your answer can't be that we genuinely care about our customers, right? Because that's not stand out enough, by the way. Most small businesses will say that and do genuinely kind of care for their customers, right? Second question, as a company, what is it you stand for versus what do you stand against, right? And have the confidence to be able to talk to that, right? Over the past few years, the whole kind of remote working has been a big debate in our country, right? It doesn't matter where you sit on that, but just I'm not saying take a stand, but like, hey, what is it? Do you hire a fully remote company? Are you passionate about that? Then take a stand on that. If you're like, no, actually, we're in person, we get together, these are the dynamics of the team, then take a stand for that as well. That's one example, but think about the values, the culture that you are actually breeding in your organization. And why would somebody want to work on your team specifically? I noticed that there were a few people who are working at organizations where you have a team, right? You may not have control over the ethos of the whole organization, but guess what? You do have control over your team. So why would somebody want to work on your team specifically as opposed to some of the other teams in your organization or other teams out there at other organizations as well? Okay, so remembering that recruitment is just as much as of an emotional decision as a logical decision, and knowing that most HR processes are set up in a very logical manner, how can you dial up the emotional side of the hiring process? The strategy number two, so this is about getting people in the door. This is about hiring what we call A-team players actually on there. So let me just pause here. I can see a question in the chat box from Kathy. Good to see you, Kathy. Once I have a winning team, how do I get them to engage with our mission? In additional programming, share updates with their students, participate in performance opportunities, etc., etc. Okay, great. So, Kathy, it's like this was planned. This is exactly the piece that we are moving on to right now. So I'm going to continue. I'm going to answer some of these questions as we're going along. If I don't answer all of them, feel free to come back at the end of this webinar. But it's a great question, right? Once I've got those people on board, how do I actually keep them motivated and engaged? Because this is something that I need to be intentional about as a leader. Now, the first thing I want to talk about is performance management. One of the key areas that, in my opinion, is often not done in the best way is actually managing the performance of my team. Let's have a think about how a typical performance management conversation goes. For most of us small business owners, what we do is we replicate what we saw in our corporate days. We replicate what we've seen happen in these larger organizations. And in larger organizations, what happens is this: at the start of the year, or just before the start of the year, we give our team goals and objectives, right? We then have the year to work through that. And then towards the end of the year, usually like, November time, so just before the year's over, we sit down with our manager and we say, okay, how did you perform? Did you hit this objective? Did you not hit that objective? On a scale of 1 to 5, and you rate yourself in these different areas. And then it's a conversation to assess your performance, right? The big challenge with this conversation is, as an employee, I know that my bonus, my pay rise is tied to how this performance management meeting goes. In the boss's eyes, they know the amount of bonus they have to pay out depends on how this performance management meeting goes. And therefore, we're not really aligned in our objectives, right? Actually, there's a bit of a tug of war happening, and a performance management meeting ends up being a negotiation as opposed to really managing the performance. And therefore, we need to step away from these once a year appraisals, even once every 6 months appraisals, right? Actually, there's two big twists we need to make. And this is going to be relevant for our 1099s as well, Kathy. Okay. So the first thing is that as a minimum, I want to be sitting down with all of my employees every 90 days on a one-on-one meeting, by the way. Yeah. And for every 90 days, I'm going to have a 30-minute meeting with them. And in that 30-minute meeting, two things are going to happen. Number one is we're going to review how are things going? How have things gone in the previous 90 days? What's worked? What hasn't worked? Right? Where's the challenges that are being faced? And you're going to give your team member honest feedback in terms of where they need to improve, what needs to change, and you're going to highlight what are they doing well and what should they continue doing. And in fact, the research shows for every one thing that you tell them that they need to be improving at, you want to be sharing at least 3 things that they are doing really well at, because what we want is them to replicate those behaviors. There's a famous story of Michael Jordan. He was being interviewed about how he became such a great player. And one of the things he said is that after every game that I played well in, I would always watch back the recordings of those games. And the interviewer asked him, well, why didn't you watch back the games that you didn't play so well in so you knew what you could do differently? And his response was, well, why would I want to watch the games I didn't do so well in? I want to know what I'm doing well and actually do that more often, more consistently, and get better at that, because that's where my strengths lie. And exactly the same principle, you want to act as a mirror. Our working day doesn't get recorded, right? Fortunately or unfortunately. So you want to act as a mirror to be able to give that feedback to your employees. So your performance management meeting looks like this, right? So it's 30 minutes. If we focus on what's gone well, what are the areas of improvement? We want to use data, facts, observable behavior to really highlight what's going on, right? That what we don't want is these things to be based on, oh, I heard that this happened, I think you're being really lazy. No, these elements are judgments as opposed to the actual behavioral descriptions, right? I noticed you have been coming in 15 minutes late for the past week. What's going on? Everything okay? We really need to make sure we're here on time. Or, hey, I've noticed your sales numbers are dropping, or you don't have as many meetings booked in as you usually do with prospects, and be able to really speak to the data of what's happening. The second piece, though, is once you've done the review, that's only the first part of the meeting. The key thing is we want to be forward focused now, right? Now, what you're going to do is set the stage for the next 90 days. What is it that you want them to work on the next 90 days so that you can see them improve in their performance? And based on what you're setting, we want to make sure that we can see two things. Number one is what's the criteria for success? How do you know that when you sit down with them again in 90 days, that actually, yes, they've been successful or no, they haven't? What do we mean by this? You're managing a sales team, right? Instead of improving sales, we want to talk about, well, actually, how many closed leads do you want? What's the conversion rate that we're aiming for to say, yes, we've been successful or no, we haven't? Right? And the second thing is what's the KPIs? What's the thing that you're going to be measuring to ensure that they are on track or not on track? Again, if it's sales calls, if it's about sales closed, it's the number of sales conversations they're having, right? Just one example. You don't always have to apply this to salespeople. This can be across the board, your admin, your marketing, all of these other areas that you have in the business. Once you've done that, you want to document this. You want to make very clear what the action points are, what the targets are, and you want to stay in touch over the quarter. So on a, however often you're doing your one-to-ones on a monthly basis, doing a quick check-in to say, hey, where are we? What's working? Where do you need some support? And we can continue in that direction. Okay, a template that my clients often use is this. With the business owners that I work with, I'll often use a template like this or something similar, and the business owners will then use this with their leadership teams and their managers. Okay, and essentially what we're looking at is three different areas of focus. So remember, my employees have their day-to-day stuff they're working on, right? These are the things that keeps them busy on a day-to-day basis. But also what we want to be highlighting is three strategic areas, three things that they can really get involved in order to meet their, let me repeat that. Three things that they can be working on a strategy level that's going to help them improve their performance in their business. So we have first objective, second objective, third objective. We're going to nail down what is the criteria of success. Okay, the criteria of success is in terms of how do we know that they have met this or not at the end of the quarter. And then what are the KPIs that you're measuring? How do we know that they're going to be on track or not on track? So we highlight this. We're then going to make a list of action points or milestones that they need to achieve. We're going to list down who's working on this. If it's, if you've got a team of people, different people doing different things, then you can list this out. But 90% of this is going to be the individual that you are working on. I like to budget time to execute this, right? Most of us have not enough hours in the day and too much work to do. So we want to actually budget. How long do we think this is going to take so they can schedule it out? But also, how long did it take them? Did it take them longer? Did it not take as long? This really helps us stay productive and helps them stay productive. Budget in terms of dollar amounts, if that's relevant. And then I actually like to schedule out when in the quarter we're going to be working on this, right? So we've got month 1, month 2, month 3. We've split it up into assumed 4 weeks every year, so every month, sorry. And then you can put a checkpoint. This is where I'm going to do this. This is when I'm going to do this. This is when I'm going to do this. So you and your team member is on the same page in terms of when things are going to happen, how they're going to happen, and therefore for your regular check-ins, you are actually saying, hey, are we on track or are we not on track? Okay. If this is a template that you find is going to be useful for you, you can scan this QR code over here and you can download the template. So let me just leave this up for a moment while I have a look at some of these questions. So what if they're 1099? So this should be relevant for 1099s. The analogy here is like being a sports coach, right? A sports coach doesn't stand on the sidelines, wait till halftime or wait to the end of the game and say, okay, this is where we done well, this is where we didn't do well. Now we need to change for the next game or the next season. No, the coach is on the sidelines, shouting instructions all the time, giving feedback all the time, setting direction all the time. And that's what we want to be doing as the leader. Okay, let's have a look at the other question. So my team is all remote contract workers, and it's hard sometimes to get them to schedule a one-to-one meeting. How can I incentivize them to do this with me? Okay, great question. So I would say this is that this needs to be established as part of the culture of the organization, right? So if it's not happening right now, what we need to do is communicate with your contractors that actually, look, this is going to be a requirement of being part of this team. Being part of this team means that we schedule a one-to-one every quarter. This is how it runs. This is how it doesn't run, right? And get everybody to buy into that. Quite frankly, if people still go as part of the team without incentive, without them actually scheduling in the one-to-one, then we have a performance problem here. Okay, if you're leading the team, you are quite frankly kind of paying the wages for this team, then there needs to be a level of like, hey, this is how we do things around here, right? I don't think you can really incentivize somebody to come, to schedule a one-to-one if they really don't want to. But if they know it's part of their role, then they really don't have a choice in this, and that's a requirement to be part of the team. Sounds harsh, by the way. Sounds harsh. Even when I say it, it sounds a little bit harsh. However, your job as a leader is to set the culture. Your job as a leader is to set the standards. And if this is one of the standards that you require, then this is one of those areas where we need to step up our leadership and really insist on it happening. There's a big challenge right now in sort of the Western world when it comes to leadership, because if you think about the journey of managers, right? In the 60s, 70s, we had this, even in the early 80s, we had this element of like the boss was like this autocratic leader. You say what I do. It's almost like we treated people like machines. Okay. Now, in 90s, 2000s, and this kind of modern day, what happened is the culture started shifting. The culture started shifting to one of autonomy, the one of more mutual respect, which is welcomed, by the way, which is a great thing. The challenge, what's happening in the modern day, is that we're almost drifting the other way now, where the team are almost like setting the rules and the standards, and the boss kind of like almost feels hostage to the team. And there's a great book, I can't remember the author, but it's called It's Okay to Be the Boss. And in fact, in some research that was done in this book, they found that a lot of employees, a lot of particularly newer people in organizations would say, I wish that my boss actually gave more direction. I wish that they managed me more as opposed to less. And therefore, it's this balance that we need to strike. But I think these are one of those examples where we really need to lay down what the standards of working in this team are. And thank you for posting that book into the chat box. What is this called? The Eisenhower template? No, it doesn't have. It's a template we use in our organization. I'll give it a name right now. I'm going to call it the winning team template. Okay. But more seriously, it's a 90-day planning template that we use to manage businesses, to manage people, and therefore if you scan the QR code, you can download and get access to this and use it in any way you wish. Okay, thank you for the questions, team. They are great. So let's go on to the next piece here. Okay, so the million-dollar question: what happens when we have employees in our team right now who are not performing? How do we handle them? And I think this is a great team audit you can do right now. So for those of you who have a pen and paper, you're sitting at your desk, and you manage a team, what I'm going to encourage you to do is write this matrix down on a scrap piece of paper, right? Now, the horizontal line demonstrates effort. If I think about my employees, right, how much effort are they putting into their roles? And then the vertical axis is the competence. How technically skilled are they at their job, right? Are they competent at doing what they've been assigned to do? Now, when it comes to developing performance and upgrading the performance of the team, I need to understand where my team member lies in this matrix to understand what the strategy is that I'm going to actually use to improve their performance. And I'm going to give you one strategy for each quadrant right now. Okay. So our first quadrant is this: with low competence, they don't seem to be performing. They don't seem to have the technical skills that we expected them to have for the job. And actually, they're not putting a lot of effort into it in the first place. Okay, so we don't see competence, we don't see effort. This is what we call the iceberg, right? We're just not seeing enough of them right now. So let me talk through all four, and then I'll give you the strategy for each one. The next type of employee is the opposite. They put in lots of effort. They're competent. They're really skilled at what they do. Here's what we call our superstars, right? We need to continue doing what you're doing with them. It's working. And the idea is that we want to actually get everybody else into the superstar quadrant. The next quadrant, bottom right, is actually they don't have the competence and the skills that we would expect them to have in this role, but they're super motivated. They put in a lot of effort. They try their hardest, but they're just not able to deliver the results. This is what we call our workhorse. And then finally, right, we have somebody who's extremely competent, extremely capable, but they just don't seem to put the effort in. And we call them our problem child. So what I'm going to do is just give you a few moments, just on your piece of paper, just maybe the initials or something that's code. You don't want this to leak out to the rest of your team, but just like, hey, where does your team members lie in this matrix? And how many do you have in the iceberg? How many do you have in the workhorse? How many problem child or problem children? And how many superstars? And this is just a really great kind of quick way to audit where you are at with your team right now. Okay, so let me give you just one strategy for each one so you can get an idea on how we would handle this. So for your person who has low competence and low effort, i.e. what we call the iceberg, for them, there's a real mismatch in what's going on over here. And you have two options. Option number one is that you really need to change up their environment. So either you're going to give them a new role, either you're going to change their kind of working practices, right? But you need to do something drastic here that's going to kind of shake things up for you to see what you can get out of them. If that doesn't work, then honestly, quite frankly, I have to ask myself, what is this person doing on this team? If they don't have the technical competence and they not putting in the effort, then really I need to question why they're there. And the idea is either they need to step up or they need to step out. Okay. The second one then, the workhorse. These are the people who don't have the skills that you thought they had to take out the role, but they put in a lot of effort. For them, there's a three-step process that we want to work on to actually get them to get them into that superstar box. Number one is we need to provide adequate training for these people. Either you're going to send them on a course, or you're going to get them some mentoring, or you're going to point them in the direction of resources that they can read up and do an online program or whatever it is, right? But you need to get them the technical competence that they need for the role. Step two is then now we need to bridge the gap. We need to bridge the gap between theory and actually how things work in the organization. Often there's a bit of a mismatch here. So now you need to support them, or you need to assign somebody to them to help them bridge that gap to actually be able to implement what they've learned into the real world. So that's more where the mentoring and the coaching comes in. And then the third step is over a period of time, and I think 90 days again is a good time period for you to review and highlight what are the areas that they have made progress in. Okay? And what we want to be seeing is a consistent, steady flow towards them increasing their competence. When they do that and their effort level stays the same, then we can get them into the superstar box. This requires time and energy from you as the leader. But by the way, if I'm leading a team of people, then actually this should be my main focus. Because if I can get my team to work at a higher level, then it reduces problems in the future, but also it keeps my customers and my clients happy. And if I can keep my team motivated, my team look after my clients pay their bills, then actually we have this flow of business that works very nice for everybody. And then finally, your problem child. Your problem child, you know they're really good. You know they can do it, right? But they're just not putting in the effort. One of the common things that we notice with these people, the pattern of behavior, is that they don't put in as much effort if they are not being challenged. Sometimes actually they are so good at what they do that actually they can do it fairly easily, and therefore they end up putting in less effort. And therefore it's your job to get them to rise to a bigger occasion, right? It's your job to make sure that they are being stretched to the point that not that it's impossible, but stretched to the point that they feel like, oh, I need to raise my game over here, right? And if you can get them to do that in almost quite a competitive way, actually, right? If you can get them to do that, then actually you see the pattern that we often see is an increase in effort, an increase in performance, and they can get to this superstar level, right? Now, I've given you one strategy for all of these. What it requires for you to do is kind of take that formula, add your own personality, do it within your values and the culture that you've set in the organization, and really work with these people. Changing the performance of employees is rarely an overnight process. It takes time, it takes energy, it takes an investment from you. So, what you need to decide is what's the time commitment that you're willing to invest to help them, and what's the progress that you need to see in order for you to continue investing your energy. Right? And that should be communicated to them, by the way. Hey, we're going to work on this. We're going to do this together. We're going to evaluate where we are in 90 days. If we're in the same place as we were 90 days ago, then we're going to have a real conversation, right? But if we see this happening, if we can see these milestones being achieved, then actually this is great. We can use this as a foundation to move forward, right? We can be really assertive and we can use empathy at the same time. And when we do that, when we combine both assertiveness and empathy in the right situation, this really makes people feel seen, feel valued, and really motivates them to bring their best energy to work. So, in summary, we've given you 3 strategies over here. Strategy number 1 is that we need to have the best talent in our organization. The way we're going to get that best talent is knowing that my recruitment process is a sales process, and the sales process is emotional just as it is logical. So, what are the things that I can describe my company, my team, and the culture at my organization in a way that really appeals to their emotions? And one way to do this is to really set a purpose and a vision that's so big, that's so exciting that people want to be part of it. The second thing then is remember is that we want to be running regular performance reviews, not once a year. We want to be doing it at least every 90 days, which not only look at what's happened, but also what's going to happen. We want to look forward the next 90 days and really set a very clear direction with outlined criteria for success so that we can monitor the performance on an ongoing basis. And the third thing is that for any underperforming team members, we need to understand what's the strategy we're going to use to get them to perform better, right? It's not a one strategy fits all. We have to look at the circumstances. And one of the things we can look at is how are they in terms of the amount of effort they're putting in, right? What's the competence level of them actually doing their assigned job? And then when we can assess them on that matrix, we can have a strategy that we're going to use to work with them to improve their performance. So they are the three things that I had for you. If you didn't get a chance to download that template, we've got the QR code over here. Feel free to download that template. If you're looking at this on your phone and you're unable to scan the QR code, I don't have the link, but you can drop me an email and I can send that link to you. Also, as a part of being on this webinar, like my other webinars, you are offered a 1 hour complimentary coaching hour where we do a deep dive into your team. We can do a team audit and come up with 3 strategies for you to really take your team to the next level. So thank you very much for being here. I am going to pause. Feel free to throw in any questions into the chat box for those of you that have them, and I will take these questions. Otherwise, for those of you who need to go, I appreciate you being here. I appreciate your time and energy, and I wish you all the best in building your teams and building your businesses. Thank you.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
I am not seeing any new questions in the chat, but we can just give it a moment here.
Sure, sure. Maybe your favorite soccer team, Tottenham, can take some tips.
Perhaps we should. We should. I do fear that is above my fan level upgrade. So
No, that gives you every entitlement as a fan. Every fan that has, oh, look, we have an Arsenal fan here. Wow. Things could get heated. Sun silent.
I will leave that to you. I know my place. So
I love it. I love it. Excellent. Well, okay, we have a couple of questions coming in now, so let's have a look. I have one long-term employee who wasn't properly trained by her first boss and now underperforming as our team builds, right? Thank you for bringing that up because that's so common, right? Whether, one of my kind of first example and stepping into leadership was that was me and my business partner, we used to purchase existing businesses, and these businesses had been around a long time, 30, 40, 50 years. And therefore, when we bought the business from the retiring director, we would inherit a team. Now, at that time, I was in my mid to late 20s. So now all of a sudden we had acquired a team where people were working on that team and they had been longer at the company than I had been on the planet. And this is a difficult and a challenging conversation to have, right? One of the key parts of leadership is being able to have those real conversations. As you can tell, I'm a big reader. There's a great book by Susan Scott called Fierce Conversations. And in this book, she argues that your success in life, your success in business, boils down to your ability to be able to navigate difficult conversations. And at this time, Mark, for this question, I think it's about having an honest conversation of saying, hey, this is what's required from this role, right? First of all, this is whatever the thoughts were before, whatever the thoughts have been up until now. She, I'm not sure if you stated what it was, but like they may have assumed that they are performing to a certain level or this is the level required. But now you, as the leader, have to come in and say, hey, this is actually what's required. And these are where the gaps are. And you'd be surprised actually, because often for a long-term employee means that they've been there for a long time for a reason, hopefully a good reason. So it's like, oh, what do I need to do to bridge the gap? Now, often it's not going to be that straightforward. It's going to come with surprise. It may come with an element of resistance, right? But that's why we have the strategies in place, right? That's why it's not a one-time conversation. It's about putting the frameworks in place, offering the support, but then coaching and mentoring through that process to set them up for success. My job as a leader is to set them up for success by providing them the tools and the frameworks that they need. If they take it, then great, we're both happy. If they don't take it, then the challenge is with the employee who is unwilling to kind of step up. And then it comes back to the iceberg conversation, right? What's it going to take to step up? Or is it going to have to be a step out situation? And I know even when I say it, it sounds harsh, but the reality is a team has a purpose. And if they're not fulfilling that purpose, then maybe there's a better fit for them as well as you. I hope that answers your question. Great, perfect.
All right. I'm not seeing any more questions. Are you?
No, looks like we are all good.
Awesome. Well, we will let you go today. I know it's lunchtime. So thank you everyone for joining us today. Thank you to Ollie for our great presentation today. Just a reminder, you'll receive a copy of the recording, which will include the slide visuals so you can download that 90-day template plan, as well as snag his email address. So please feel free to reach out, and thank you all for joining us. Have a great afternoon.
Perfect. Thank you for being here. Bye.